Hey up everybody, I'm just over on my Marford lathe at the moment, and I'm just doing a production run of some bicycle spoke nipples. I just thought it might be interesting for any beginners out there that's just starting up in this hobby. I know you all professional seasoned machinists are going to know all this, so it's basically for any beginners really. If you've got a lot of components to make, the same components, like a batch run, and especially if they're small components like I'm doing, it can probably be a bit daunting, but that it's going to be time consuming. But if you just set your stall out, look at your drawing, plan the operations, get the machine set up in a manner that's the operations are going to flow, if you like, you'll be surprised how quick you can knock them out. Here's my drawing. I've got to make 40 of them. The bicycle spoke nipples. They're only 14mm long. I'll just move over to the lathe and I'll show you how I'm going to set my lathe up to approach this. And if you just you know, take a few minutes out to think about your operations and you make a plan, set your machine up, it's time well spent when you're doing a batch run, rather than just going at it ad hocly, if you like. So I've got my lathe set up, I've got my milling machine set up, and I can knock one of these out in 3 or 4 minutes. Right, let's just have a little look at this component that I'm making. It's got a tapped hole at the middle, it's got a counter bore at one end, it's got the top turned, it's got a square on one end, a dome on the other end with a screwdriver slot in the other, and a little chamfer on the end there. So my first operation then is to set the bar that I'm using to the length each time that it's stuck out the chuck, and I'm just using a depth gauge for that. So that's going to get me the correct length each time for my stops on my carriage. Once I've got that set in the chuck, then my first job I'm going to do is centre drill it with a tapping drill for the thread, and I've got to put a counter bore in this end, just the diameter to take the thread out. So I've got my centre drill set in one chuck, that's for the next operation. I've got my tapping drill set in the next chuck. Just use the markings on my tailstock to get the depth, because that's not super important. And then I'm going to take that out and then put this counter bore drill in and counter bore it 1/8 deep, just to take the thread out to the thread diameter clearance. And once I've done that, I'm going to move over to my turning operations, and I'm going to turn the top. So I've got a tool in that's going to automatically give me my angle on the head once I've turned it. So perhaps 2 or 3 cuts, set my dial on my cross slide, and then each time that will bring me within a couple of thou of the size that I want to be at. So when I turn that top, so I've got my homemade carriage stop, and it just clamps to my lathe bed in any position. So it's got 3 settings, setting number 1, setting number 2, setting number 3. And I'm just going to be using number 1 and number 3 setting for this job. So I've got that set now to the correct depth for that tool to stop at when it turns the top diameter. So each time I'm just going to come up to the stop, do that diameter. Then after that it's over to mill and I'm going to mill this square on the end. Got my milling machine set up to the relevant positions to mill this square on. I'll go over to mill and do that when I do. I'll show you that when I do one. Then once I've got that square milled on, back over to lathe, screw chuck back on, and then I'm going to part it off using a parting tool with a radius already built into it. I've just ground that up. It's an all-in-one tool for parting off and for radiusing this back edge, this back portion. So I'm going to change my tool over, put that in, and then I'm just going to flick the stop over to the number 3 position, and then my carriage is going to automatically, once I've got this tool out, so I've changed the tool over to the parting and radius tool. I'm going to put my stop over to number 3 position, and that will automatically stop me in the parting off position to get me my length. Then once that's parted off, that's going to leave me with the component finish one way, like that. Then once I've done all of them that way, I've just got to put them in the chuck, or put them in the collet chuck, and I'm going to run the tap down them, then back into the milling machine and put the slot in that phase, and that's basically it. Everything's going to flow, I'm saying naturally, without having to keep to and froing as much as you would do if you hadn't thought about it. So let's do one on camera then, and I'll show you me doing one. Right, first job, I'm going to centre drill it. Now I'm going to go in with the tapping drill, and I'm just using my tailstock graduations to get me to the depth, because it's not super critical. Now I'm going to put the clearance drill in on the tapping size, and I'm just going to go in 1/8 with that. Right, that's the drilling operations done. I can now go on to the turning operations. So I've got my carriage stop on number 1 stop, and I just set my tool holder then up to this stop. I'm going to just do this in a couple of cuts. I'm just going to put a chamfer on this front end. That's complete now. And that's got me within a couple of thou of my required size. So I'm going to take the chuck off now and put it onto my milling machine and cut this square on the end. Right, I've got my dividing edge set, marked off in 4 positions, so I can just put this square on the end. I've got my cutter set to the depth that's required automatically each time, and I've got the X-axis on the table set to the relevant position for the edge of the work where the square is going to finish up. Back over to lathe now. Back in lathe. Just going to change this tool to parting off tool. Set me carriage stop to number 3 position. Just set my tool post square. It takes me approximately 3 minutes to make one that way. Obviously it's a bit longer with camera on, but you know, without the camera I'm doing them in about 3 minutes. Then the other operation is just going to take another couple of minutes at most. So 4 or 5 minutes and they're complete. I've made 40 now, one way. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to put them in the chuck. Run the tap through. I'm going to do all the 40 like that. That way it saves me keep undoing the chuck and taking it to the milling machine. So I'll do them all this way first, tap them all, and then I'll set my milling machine up to cut the screwdriver slot in. I thought I'd just set my timer going to see how long it takes to tap one. "34 seconds. Complete. Stop clock at 30 seconds, but I got delayed stopping clock, so probably 20 to 25 seconds. So if you take into account that I've got to change over in chuck, I suppose you could call it that 30 seconds. So it's going to take me, I've got 40 to do, it's going to take me 20 minutes again to do the slotting. Well, that's my batch work done of spoke nipples completed. I think it took me approximately 2 hours 10 minutes in total. It took me an hour and a half to do them one way, approximately 20 minutes to put the thread on the other way, and then again approximately 20 minutes to put the screwdriver slot in them all. Now I've just had to do a little bit of a guesstimate there because I've had to keep knocking off for doing a little bit of camera work, but I think 2 hours 10 minutes is about the right time. Now that's just for any beginners out there, this really. I know all you professionals are going to know all this, and it's only my way of doing it. There's more than one way to do anything in machining. You'll find that out, I think, and what suits one person one way might not suit another person another. So that's just my way. I'm not saying it's the only way. So if you just apply your mind to any laborious batch work, or any batch work that looks a bit daunting and you think, oh, I've got all them to make, if you just apply your mind to it, write the operations down, see if you can tweak them in any way so that you keep your operations flowing, you'll save no end of time on batch work. Well, that's just my little insight into it, and if you've found that informative and enjoyable, give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, and I'd appreciate that. I'm going to get onto my e-bike conversion project, which these are for, and I'm going to continue with that now then. So thanks for watching then, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye for now then.